Ladies and gentlemen, I am, like everybody else, really delighted to be here today, and thanks to the organisers for asking me. Yes, I am an emigrant, definitely. I can imagine, I have lived in other countries, but believe me, moving counties in Ireland even is like emigrating. It's like a whole different world. The people of Kerry are very welcoming, of course, but they do remind me that we are from the weaker counties and they're happy to support us. And my 5-year-old wears the Laois jersey with pride down there, but I'm told to take it off her. I'm going to give her an inferiority complex. So I have to get the green and gold, but I'm refusing to buy it as yet anyway. I think immigration is very complex, and a bit like what Anya was saying, you can be a bit conflicted about it. On one hand, you know the whole scenes at the airport and how sad it is. But on the other hand, then, people have a great opportunity to learn and bring back ideas to this country. But I also think immigration, if we look at it, it can teach us a lot about ourselves as a country and a nation. I know the National Youth Council recently did a big kind of conference on this, and they found that the barriers to returning for immigrants weren't so much, finding work. It was all the other things about us as a country. The lack of childcare, the fact that jobs are centred around Dublin, how difficult it is to get a house. So it's all these things I think that we need to look at as well as a country that aren't really maybe working so well. The bit of immigration that I want to talk to today about is kind of, I suppose, immigration into our country and how that reflects on us as a nation. And I'm afraid, unfortunately, I don't think it reflects very well on us. How do we treat people who come here, especially people who are seeking, refuge, people from awful situations that come to our shores seeking asylum? We can laugh, about, I'm a refugee in Kerry, or I'm seeking asylum in Laois this weekend. This is really serious stuff that these people are running from and looking for help with, and how do we treat them? And that's what I want to look at. And I know I looked a bit at the James Fintan Lalor's works as well, and I was always very interested in James Fintan Lalor. I'm from Ballyroan, not too far away, but we're very near the birthplace of James Fintan Lalor, the fabulous Tinnakill House, and we did a lot of work in the past trying to look at how you could restore that. It's a fantastic bit of Laois, and it's such a pity that we can't do something about that. But I was always fascinated about it. And, the words he spoke, and Michael gave us some of them earlier on, they still ring so true today. And I think a lot of them apply to what I'm going to talk about as well. He did say, he declared the government of 1847 to be null and void of moral effect. And I think when we look at how we deal with people who come here, that we definitely are null and void of moral effect in relation to how we handle it. The 1951 UN Convention on Refugees means that anybody who is fleeing persecution in their own country and who isn't guaranteed safety in their own country is entitled to apply for refugee status. Now, Ireland is a signatory to that, so people are entitled to come here looking for asylum. They enter a system in Ireland which is very convoluted. And would you believe that many people are 10 years sitting in that system? So they came 10 years ago, they applied to our system, which is through it's two independent bodies under the Department of Justice. They applied for asylum, and because of the convoluted nature of that, they're still waiting for a decision on whether they can stay here as a refugee or not. If you become a refugee, you're entitled to protection in Ireland and to not everything that an Irish citizen has, but to a lot of what we have. While you're an asylum seeker, you are treated very badly. And for a lot of people, we do turn a blind eye to it. We don't know about it. Out the road here at the former Montague Hotel that many of us would have had weddings and attended various events at, that is now what they call a direct provision centre. And how Ireland has decided to handle asylum seekers is through this direct provision centres. Basically, they're totally relying on the state for everything. They can't cook their own meals, they can't live in their own accommodation, they must stay in these direct provision centres. There's many of them scattered across 16 counties in Ireland. I work in the Tralee International Resource Centre. We have 2 centres in Tralee. One is a centre for families and one is a centre for single men. Basically, they're hostels. They were only ever designed to be for 6 months accommodation. There's people I know in Tralee who've been there at least 10 years. It's incredible. So there's families living in one room. There's a woman I know in the Montague at the road, 7 years with herself, her husband and 2 children in one room. Can you imagine? You can't make a cup of tea, you can't, have the bottle of milk in the room, you're not allowed to do any of that. You must follow very strict guidelines. So they're totally dependent on the state, and they're sitting in these, I suppose, the monster of direct provision that grew up. I don't think we really planned ahead. We were a little bit, there was a big lot of applicants, about 14 years ago, and the government decided the best way to deal was through this direct provision centre. But we've now had 14 years of this, and it's definitely time to review it and see for a new model. One example I have is a young woman from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. She was forced to leave there due to internal conflict in her country, and she arrived in Ireland to claim asylum. She was put in a hostel room where, unfortunately, she had to relive some of that conflict. She says in her own words, "I shared the room with someone from another country and another Congolese woman who came from a different part of my country. Our tribes do not see eye to eye. In fact, they're fighting each other in the Congo. So they were actually fighting. So the two of us were always fighting. And it was a really difficult and rough experience. The hostel managers didn't understand. Because the direct provision centres are run by private companies who have very little experience of dealing with vulnerable adults or children. So while they're in the centres, they're giving an allowance of 19.10 a week. That's 19, not 90, because when I first heard it, I thought it was 90. 19 euros 10 cents, and for each child, 9 euros 60. Okay, they get their meals and their accommodation, but can you try living on 19 euros 10 cents a week? I think the big problem is going to be for children. Now, I know we've heard a lot lately about the mother and baby homes and the institutions that say I wasn't maybe around at the time it was happening, but I'm around at the time this is happening. And I do not want to be listening to the Joe Duffy live line in 30 years' time where everybody's ringing and saying, I was in a direct provision centre, or what were we like, how did we treat children, and all the scandals coming to light about what was going on here. Because children are the big loser in this. There's children living with their family in one room. There's no privacy, they have nowhere to do their homework. They have no extra money for any extracurricular activities, so they just come home from school. They're allowed to go to school. I mean, that is covered, but they have no extra money to do anything else. They're living in close proximity with strange adults, basically, from different countries, many who have mental health issues because of the trauma that they have suffered in their own country. And then the worst thing of all is they sit in the system for up to 10 years. Many of these children were born in Ireland. Their parents came here, they were born here. But then eventually a decision is made and the parents are told, sorry, can't stay here, you must return to Nigeria or the Congo, wherever you came from. And the children who weren't even born there and know nothing about that country have to leave the Irish school system and return back to where their parents came from. So we've spent all our money educating them, clothing them, feeding them, and then we say bye and send them home, send them back. It's not their home, this is their home, but we send them back to where their parents came from. Education is also another big problem. While you're in the direct provision system, while you're an asylum seeker, you're only entitled to do very basic level education courses, English and computer courses really at a very low level. This is awful. Imagine sitting for 10 years and you can't work, you're not allowed to work, you can't really access education. And for children, the problem around this is they can go to school, they can go to secondary school, but when they come to leave secondary school and all their friends are going to college and they've got a place in college perhaps, they are treated as foreign students and the fees are crazy. It's impossible, especially on 19 euros 10 cents a week. You're not going to be able to save for college fees. So really, effectively, they're not allowed to go to college. Not allowed to work. So many adults come here with great skills and they're professionals in their own country, but because of a situation, they had to flee. But unfortunately, they're not allowed to work in this system. Many countries, other countries in Europe, allow asylum seekers to work if they've been in the country for 6 months, but that's not the case here. So basically, when you come out of the system, then you're very unemployable because all the skills that you have to maybe use them for 5, 6, 7 years. The other big issue, of course, is mental health, as you can imagine. You've possibly come from a situation where you fled, maybe left your families. I know many of the women who have come to Tralee had to leave their children behind. I mean, just imagine the trauma of that. Then you're put in the direct provision system, no support, isolated, very hard to meet people, just nobody to support you. Basically get, as I said, your food and your shelter, and that's it. No other supports are given to them. So what I really want to show you today is that the costs of the asylum system in Ireland are too high. The cost to this country, it's too high morally, but it's also very high economically. It costs on average about 150 million each year to run our asylum system. And as I say, at the end of it, the people maybe have to be deported back to the country they came from. I think we definitely need to address this in order to prevent any other harm and in the long run to reduce the costs to the state. We definitely need to get rid of the system of direct provision. That should be brought to an end. It's detrimental to the welfare of the people who are coming here seeking refuge, and also it's very, very costly. We need to provide an environment that is supportive, that shows some respect and dignity to these people who have come here to us for help, and allow permission as well for them to work and to access education. In the words of President Michael D. Higgins, he said, "In the Ireland of the future, we will be judged with reference on how our policies and practices respond to the plight of those who seek refuge here. We will be judged on how we treat those who present at our borders as strangers in difficulty, and how we respond to their stories as they seek our protection, and on the respect we afford them in the legal and administrative processes we oversee." I do really believe that, I try and imagine if James Fintan Lalor was alive today, and Michael mentioned about how he fought the unjust system of the land situation in Ireland. Definitely, I would hope he would be fighting the unjust system that is this today. And I think he would be saying about this issue what he said as well many years ago. Somewhere and somehow, and by somebody, a beginning must be made. Who strikes the first blow for Ireland? Thank you.